Hello everybody, welcome back. This is your tropical update for June 20th. We're currently watching two areas of interest still. That's going to be Tropical Storm Bret now with winds of 65 miles per hour, as well as Invest 93 with a high chance of formation behind it. As we can see here, severe Tropical Storm Bret is making its way towards the Lesser Antilles, where tropical storm watches and warnings are now in effect. Invest 93 should go out to sea, but we're going to continue to monitor potential land impacts down the line due to that system. As you can see from the impact map, we're no longer expecting Bret to reach hurricane strength. As a result, the moderate risk of impacts has been downgraded to slight, as well as a few areas losing that minimal risk as that track begins to be focused in with Tropical Storm Bret today. So as we can see on the European ensembles, Bret likely going to track near the Windward Islands. However, those strongest winds associated with Bret will be on the north side, as I'll show you here in a second, from the aircraft reconnaissance that went through the storm. Probably only going to last about 2 or 3 more days before Bret dissipates over the Caribbean Sea, as we call it the graveyard for tropical cyclones. Invest 93L will be making its way out to sea, although again, we want to keep an eye on Bermuda down the line, as well as possibly portions of the northern Lesser Antilles for potential impacts due to this system. Now, it's worth noting that, in my opinion, Invest 93L is already a tropical depression, and so we'll continue to monitor that. I'll show you here in a second why I think that. Here's Bret right now. Good amount of convection associated with it, but very displaced. The center is actually really probably about due south, maybe a little bit even further to the west, away from the rest of the convection, so really not near the center of the storm at all. But as we can see down on the cone there, the tropical storm force winds do extend a few, about I think 50 or 60 miles away from the center, maybe even more at this point. And that's really kind of standard for storms like this, especially for it to be stronger on the north side of the system. Those tropical storm warnings clearly in effect for the areas that will be impacted most, and the watches for areas that may be impacted. Flooding will be a concern. We're looking at 3 to 6, isolated to 10 for areas such everywhere from Guadeloupe down to St. Vincent and the Grenadines as well, and including the island of Barbados. Storm surge possible, nothing too crazy with this one, of course, with winds of 65 miles an hour. And of course, those, especially to the north side of the center of Bret, will be experiencing those strongest winds. We could see gusts to 75 though, so gusts to hurricane force certainly possible. As we can see from the models here, a few models take this a little bit stronger than where it's at right now, but really it's not going to get any stronger than this. The H-Wharf still is in its own world, taking the storm to the north and doing something, but that's not going to happen. The majority of the models do not foresee that as a possibility, and so it's not. Please excuse on this slide and the next slide, Martinique is now under a tropical storm warning, as well as St. Lucia, Barbados, and Dominica are on that tropical storm watch. Here in about 2 days from now, 48 hours, the models generally have 2 tropical cyclones, one a Bret that just crossed over the Lesser Antilles, and the second what would likely become Tropical Depression 4 or Tropical Storm Cindy as Invest 93L. As we can see above me right now is the aircraft reconnaissance that went through the storm. You can see, again, those strongest, those reds and oranges north of the center of the system and pretty well defined. In fact, it was enough to actually upgrade the system another 5 miles per hour because of how strong those winds were. So we'll continue to monitor Bret. It should not strengthen much more, but that's, it's all guesswork. Here with Invest 93L, we just see in the past few minutes a strong convection near the center of the storm. And if you look down really below the clouds, this thing really looks like it's wrapped up into a tropical depression at this point. Why it's not identified as such by the Hurricane Center is a question not for me at this point. I guess we can find out later in the year when the report comes out, maybe why it isn't a tropical cyclone yet. Perhaps there's just something lacking. Again, 24 hours ago, this thing did not have much convection with it at all, so that could also be a concern that the Hurricane Center has. But we're beginning to see some serious outflow with the system, which does usually mean that this is developing into a tropical cyclone. Current formation chances remain the same as yesterday, 70% within 48 hours, 80% within the next 7 days. We are likely expecting a tropical storm, outside chance of hurricane force, especially maybe even after it turns north. But as it turns north, it'll begin to be affected by wind shear, which should cause the system to decrease in strength, much like what is happening with Bret right now. The good news is it shouldn't take a path directly through the Lesser Antilles, but it may graze them. And again, Bermuda may be in the sights down the road, but at this point, nothing that I'm too concerned about. We can see 4 days from now, according to the HAFS model, the system's still off and away from everything, and it's just something to keep an eye on. Anyways, guys, stay safe, especially if you're in the islands. That's all for now. Chris Dixon, InfoWeather Media.